Greetings, boys and ghouls. I'm Sean with the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. You've asked for it, and now the Goosebumps Crew Podcast wants to deliver.
And you're in for a scare, because the Goosebumps Crew is proud to announce one weekend at HorrorLand.
So get ready, my friends, for an event that celebrates the magic of horror literature like never before.
It's where you'll find like-minded fans of some of your favorite horror shows and movies, including some of the guests who've appeared on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast.
Our special guests, panels, and activities for fans of all ages will immerse you in an exciting and spooky atmosphere, sure to get you into the spirit of things.
But here's the thing, we can't do it alone. We need your support to bring this dream of ours to life.
By making a donation, you become an essential part of making this extraordinary event a reality.
And as a token of our appreciation, the Goosebumps Crew has prepared some extraordinary gifts and rewards exclusively for our backers.
So, my friends, join us on this magical journey where we will create a weekend filled with pure passion and shared love for the horror genre.
Please visit our Kickstarter donation page now. Let your passion ignite the flame that will make this event a reality.
The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stein's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas, and I'm joined with Bjorn and Nick. We're here to talk some more Goosebumps. We are the Goosebumps Crew, after all. So today, we have a pretty special episode today, and I say special because we're going to be talking about specials. In this case, Goosebumps two-parter specials. There was a lot of them. The Goosebumps TV series had a lot of specials that were separated into two parts. Most of them were the ones that were released on VHS. They were premiered on Fox in prime time, and frankly, they're some of the most well-known episodes of the Goosebumps TV show. The Haunted Mask, Werewolf Fever Swamp, Welcome to Dead House. I mean, these are episodes that are brought up all the time, and for good reason. I mean, they're certainly some of the most memorable. And it's funny because they're also the ones that are just so happen to be double-parters. So we're going to talk about those episodes today, but not just talk about them. We're going to rank them. All 16 two-parter episodes, we're going to rank them from our least favorite to our favorite. And we each have our own individual lists, so I'm excited to see where you guys land on these rankings. I hope we're not all on the same page. For the first time, I hope we're not on the same page.
I don't think we will be.
We're all going to be different. I'm telling you, it's all going to be different.
I think some of them will be close, but I do think I'd be surprised if most of them are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that.
Well, we're going to find out in just a few seconds. But first, as always, I must remind you all that if you're not following the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, following us on our audio platforms, or following us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, then what the heck are you guys doing? If you guys are Goosebumps fans like we are, then you guys are going to love the Goosebumps Crew. Not only do we have new episodes every week, Tuesdays on our audio platforms and Wednesdays on our YouTube channel, where we talk about Goosebumps books, the TV shows, the movies, merch, video games, whatever you have that's Goosebumps. But we've also had some incredible guests on the podcast, actors from the 90s TV show, as well as crew, people involved with the movies, other Goosebumps fans, Goosebumps cover artists, people who've worked in stuff like the toys, the Goosebumps musical, all of that stuff. So many wonderful guests. If you guys love Goosebumps, check out the Goosebumps Crew Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio, wherever you can find your podcasts. Alright, so we're going to get into our ranking. But before we get into our ranking, I do want to clarify a few things. So, oh yes, I guess we should say, at the time of recording this, the new House of Shivers book has been unveiled. It's called Say My Name, Say My Name.
Say my name.
And,
How pretty
it's got a very
beautiful
nice
are those colors.
It's got a nice looking fish. That fish got
It's a
some good
pretty
hair.
cover. Like it's really, I like the colors on the fish. I think it's really cool. I mean, it doesn't really show well up on my phone, but
It definitely
it's
has a
really
nice balance
look.
of greens and blues and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
what can I say? I like fish.
It's better than Book 3's cover. Let's put it that way.
Ooh,
Than the Mummy.
ooh,
Night of the Living
throwing
Mummy.
shade,
Better than
ooh.
that.
But before we,
I got a
get
few
into
in
our
mind.
ranking of the two-parter episodes, I do want to clarify a few things beforehand. Number one, so as I said, there are 16 episodes that we are ranking. We are not, however, including Monster Blood and More Monster Blood or Trilogy. And the reason is, I don't think either of those episodes really fit our parameters, mostly because I feel like all of those episodes, while they have a connecting storyline, they're sort of made with the idea of them still being separate in a way. Monster Blood and More Monster Blood are two very different locations with two cast of characters. The only constant is the main character and the fact that there's Monster Blood in it. And Trilogy, even though that's kind of connected, it kind of comes together in the end. The first two ones are sort of still like standalone stories that are just connected by this one thing. Basically, our parameter is the episodes have to be two halves of a whole episode, in a whole sense. So that's our parameters. That's where we chose the 16 episodes, and we're gonna see where we ranked on our enjoyment of all 16. And to start things off, starting at the bottom, number 16, least favorite episode. Me personally, I feel the constant thing with Goosebumps episodes, and especially two-parters, is you need to pick the episodes that fit the runtime you give them. If you make an episode 2 parts, you really need to justify that runtime. And there's a few here in my bottom few that I don't think really do that. I feel like they really suffer from a dragging issue. And case in point, my number 16 is going to be Attack the Mutant. This is an episode that slogs for the first half. Slogs for the first half. This is an episode where I don't think this needed to be 2 parts. I think this could have been a 1-part, 30-minute episode like all the others, because the first part is just walking. It's walking around a giant empty corridor just being like, oh, what's that? Oh, it's a freaking wall. Or, if it's not that, it's the main character going around to other characters and being like, look at this comic book! Look at this comic book! I don't care about the comic book, that's stupid. Or, I don't care about comic books, I just want to look at my freaking rocks. They somehow managed to make, whatever the kid's name is, the best friend character, somewhat weirder than in the book.
Nerd.
Because I don't even think he was obsessed with rocks in the book. But for some reason, this kid just, like, loves looking at rocks. For some reason.
You can't like the episode that much because you can't even remember his name.
Yeah, exactly. It's just something where it's like...
It's forgettable.
It's forgettable, definitely, until you get to the second half. And really, like, the second half of the second half. Like, a fourth of this episode is entertaining. Because I do like the sets. I think Adam West is good. I think Scott Wickware, you're awesome, man. He does a good job as the Masked Mutant. And I think once it gets into that campy superhero stuff, it really does have fun with it. Unfortunately, it's a fourth of the episode, and it's done in an instant. They have to spend more time walking around big empty hallways and buildings and all that stuff, and it's just so uninteresting. So that's where I landed on that one. That's my number 16. I don't think it's the worst Goosebumps episode. There are certainly episodes that make me, like, frustrated when I watch them. Attack of the Mutant is just really, really boring, and that's kind of, like, the main problem I have with it. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's just really boring. But it is my number 16. I do think it's the worst two-parter of the series.
Now, see, my number 16 is different. And that's why I say none of ours, I think, are going to line up, except for maybe when we get to the top 5. We might have similar ones there. But my number 16 is How I Got My Shrunken Head.
Really?
I did not really care for that. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, saying that's fun, but the episode's terrible. Like, it's so forgettable. I don't know. Like, I know when we had Ron Oliver on, he talked about how fun it was to make it or whatever, but it was just, I did not care for that episode. Like, I can't even remember the last time I watched it. Like, it is just, to me, a forgettable episode. There's not too much to say about it other than that, because I don't care for many of the actors that were in it. The story compared to the book, at least for me, was not very good either. Like, the adaptation wasn't very good. I mean, I guess it got the point across, but it's just my opinion. Not really caring about it.
Shout out to Becky Lantis for being in that episode.
Oh, well, I would say Becky definitely was in a much better episode earlier on, so...
Oh, yes.
Yes.
She was the better part of Shrunken Head, I must admit. And I really enjoyed the design of the Shrunken Head, but yeah, no, I agree. It's a pretty low ball episode.
Yeah, it got to the point. That was to the point of Goosebumps, though, where it got real cheesy and real campy, and it kind of left out the scary, and I missed that, I think, from the earlier episodes, and so it ranked pretty low for me.
My least favorite episode. This is going to be a really short and sweet answer, guys. This is the first time I think I've ever mentioned this in any video that I've ever done since I started YouTubing. The one and only Goosebumps episode that I cannot sit through is Deep Trouble.
Wow,
I'm sorry.
Oh.
The first, 5 minutes of it, it's just cringe for me to the point that I can't even, I don't know. There's nothing about this episode. Like, I love the book. I think it's a great book. But, yeah, and as we know, this is actually the story of Deep Trouble 2. Even though it's called Deep Trouble. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Deep Trouble 2, so maybe that's why I don't like the episode so much. But yeah, it's short, sweet answer, guys. It's one of the probably the only Goosebumps episode that I don't think I can sit through from start to finish without having to change over. Do you know what I mean? I mean, just that on the back right there. That I can't even. I can't. Sorry, that's my least favorite. Moving on.
Wow, that's really interesting. You're right. I never heard you talk about that episode before. That's wow. No. I didn't know you actually didn't really like that one. Really
no, cool. The thing is, it was my first ever Goosebumps DVD. I will admit that. Because it was in that. It was when they did, because funny enough, the Scholastic Book Fair at my school, they actually had that you could order the DVDs, certain ones
cool.
at the time, back in 2007 or 8 or something. And I remember that was one of them, and I remember getting so excited and then being very let down when I watched it. Because at that time I'd seen all the, Haunted Masks and Night of the Living Dummies, and they were great. And then I saw that and was like, what the hell? Is this still the same show? But yeah, no, even in my 10-year-old, 11-year-old brain, I just couldn't enjoy that one for some reason. I don't know. Least favorite Goosebumps episode, Deep Trouble 2 should be, but it is what it is.
Yeah. It'd be like Night of the Living Dummy 2, though, where it's super confusing. It's why'd you skip over the first one? But No, that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
It was unaired, remember? It exists somewhere.
Well, moving on to number 15. This is an episode that it shares a lot of the same problems with Attack of the Mutant for me. My only thing is that the sheer weirdness of it all kind of puts it a little over it for me, but I have kind of the same feelings about it. And that's going to be How I Got My Shrunken Head. Now, for me, you're absolutely right, Nick. This one is very forgettable, to me at least. I don't think it's as good as the book. And I think it's just an overall uninteresting episode. Not to mention, it's weird. I mean, like, even for the weird era of the Goosebumps TV show, this episode is weird. This episode has a Elvis pilot impersonator in, like, the first 10 minutes. and then the ending when Mark finds out that he has the jungle magic inside him all along, and then he just keeps saying that, Kalia! 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 And then that, like, just flying over everyone, being like, holding out his hand like God, and just being like, Kalia! Kalia! And it's so odd. The only things I like about it are, I really like the shrunken head itself. I think it is a very nice looking, not only animatronic, but I think it's just a really good looking shrunken head as a whole. And I'll be honest, like I said, the only reason this is edging above Attack of the Mutant for me is just because there are a few more things I can laugh at, where that other one, I'm just like, I should have said this. Attack of the Mutant for me is like the when are we getting to the fireworks factory episode of Goosebumps. Like, that's what it is. It's just like, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? When are we going to get to the mutants? But this one has a little more going for it. It's at least a little more interesting throughout when you watch it. But honestly, when I'm done watching it, I forget it like 5 minutes later. So my number 15, How I Got My Shrunken Head.
Sounds like you're deep trouble for me.
I mean, in a sense, it's nothing egregious, but it's just one where I'm just kind of like, it's in one ear and out the other. And
yeah,
I don't know, it's never one that I really want to put on ever. Like, if I'm in the mood to watch Goosebumps, very rarely am I gonna choose How I Got My Shrunken Head, if ever. So that's where I landed.
You would have to be
as much as we love Goosebumps. I mean, that's literally what we've said before. Is like, not every episode's a winner.
No.
You know, and we can proudly say that because there are a lot of good episodes, but there are quite a few too that just are kind of stink bombs that somehow made their way into the show.
Yeah, many of those good episodes are on this list, I will say. But there are just some episodes. But again, both of those bottoms that I just listed off, for me, they're still, like, probably on the very top of even, like, my bottom 10. Like, because there's some episodes that I'm just, like... Those ones I'm just kind of, like... Where some others, like... Teacher's Pet or Go Eat Worms or Say Cheese and Die Again, I'm, like, literally pulling the hair out of my head. Like... That's the ones for me.
You know,
but
that's funny, because, like, my friend Adam, Shrunken Head's one of his favorite episodes. Like, he loves that episode. And it kind of worked the opposite effect for me. That was one of his first DVDs. So he feels the nostalgia for it, like watching it.
Mm-hmm.
But then for me, my first DVD was Deep Trouble, so I was let down because it was my first Goosebumps DVD and it was a bad experience with it. So that's why I was worked opposite.
Imagine
for me,
that soiled you for Goosebumps forever, and you sold all your stuff.
Well, I just love too
the sack
when his mom comes in after the shrunken head like floats after him, and Mark's just like, the head's alive, the head's alive. And then the guy who's there to see her, like, just drives off. And it's like, damn.
Who delivers packages that late, by the way? Like, and honestly,
right?
What was that? For years, I've been trying to figure out if it was real or not, but that game he's playing on his computer with that jungle man, and he's, like, dipping in the water, and there's, like, an alligator or something. And I'm like, what the hell is this game that he's playing? I really want to know. And I remember for years trying to find it online. Like, I used to just search Google, like, Jungle Man Flash game, on Google, hoping something would just come up and flash. It looked like a flash game, so I was like, Jungle Man Swamp flash game. I used to search up like so many things to see if it would just randomly come up, like, and I would type in like late 90s, hoping to narrow the search down, and I could never find it.
Weird ending too.
Yeah,
Maybe someone who's listening or watching this will know, and they can share that in the comments.
I love.
If you know what that game that was in there, if that was actually a game.
If you know, it's like Unsolved Mysteries. It's like, if you have any whereabouts on the 90s Goosebumps Flash game, put it in the comments.
Yeah. I'm like, what is it?
One more thing I'll say. This episode has a weird ending. Kid basically enslaves 3 people and keeps them in his room, in his closet. They are completely bound to his whim, and that is concerning to me. Oh yeah. Anyway, that's my 15 pick.
Mine will be short and sweet on 15 because my 15 is Deep Treble. And it goes along with a lot of the stuff that we've already discussed. But as much as I like like Todd Fennell and Laura Vandervoort, I don't know. I just did not get into this episode like at all. I mean, it was pretty boring to me, and even the effects didn't bother me too much, like the giant iguana that we saw. Bjorn hold up a minute ago. That didn't even bother me really that much. It was just, I don't know. I was just bored throughout most of it. I didn't really think it needed to be a 2-parter either. I think that's kind of like Attack of the Mutant. It could have been a 1-part deal, and you could have just put it all in one episode and still made it ideally better. Yeah, but we'll never know.
Yeah, they could have done Deep Trouble.
I'll keep that
1
short
and
and sweet because there's not much to talk about with Deep Trouble.
Yeah, well, like what they could have done was, because like 2-parter, and we thought it would work better as 20 minutes. They could have done like the first Deep Trouble as part 1, and then Deep Trouble 2 is part 2. You could have had a double whammy. Like, you get both books, but you get just the 1 2-parter, and it's like both. But I don't know. I think I agree.
I'm not sure how they would screenplay that with 2 books, with 2-part books that into one episode.
Deep Trouble 1 is like relatively large scale. I mean, it has like a giant sea monster and like mermaids and everything, and then Deep Trouble 2 is like an entirely different plot. I guess you can maybe do it like a Monster Blood, more Monster Blood sort of thing, but I don't know.
My 15 is again, I'm a big fan of the book, but I wasn't the biggest fan of the episode. I didn't hate the episode though. It's one I can actually sit through, and I will watch from time to time, is Cry the Cat. I actually don't hate it, but I don't love it. I like the concept of it. It's funny because the opening to this reminds me a lot of Scream 3, where it's like movie within a movie. And I actually like that idea, and I like kind of how it's shown. And I mean, Corey Sevier, shout out to you from Terror Tower. He was in this episode. And I really, really like how this creeped me out as a kid. The makeup, like, that genuinely scared me as a kid. So I think when I watched it when I was younger, I enjoyed it a lot more. But then, when you go back and you rewatch something as an adult, it doesn't hit the same. And Cry the Cat's one of those that didn't resonate well from when I was a kid to now. But I don't hate it. Like I said, it's definitely got some great qualities about it. But like, I think it's a fine book. I know R.L. Stein has said it was like one of the worst books he's ever written, but I enjoyed the book. You know what I mean? I really did.
That's like an R.L. Stein hot take right there, because I like Cry the Cat. I think it's like, after Monster Blood 4 was such an abysmal book, I think Cry the Cat was like a really good return to form.
I do too.
So it's weird that he doesn't like it. I'll never understand.
Maybe that's what he's getting confused with. Maybe he's thinking he didn't like Monster Blood 4, but he did like Cry the Cat. I don't know.
I mean, that's true. Maybe that way around. But no, I enjoyed the book, and Tim's art is very iconic from Cry the Cat, and I don't love the episode now, but I will sit through it. So there's something. I couldn't sit through Deep Trouble I can't. It's like the one episode I cannot do. Or Teacher's Pet is another one I cannot sit through. But this one I can, from start to finish. I do enjoy it. It's got some good qualities to it. Definitely.
I
So
agree.
yeah, that sits at my number 15. Cry the cat.
Well, on to my number 14. This is probably going to be the biggest hot take of my list. I've said it before. I just cannot get into this episode. I don't hate it, but I certainly don't love it. Number 14, I'm sorry. It's A Night in Terror Tower. I don't like Night in Terror Tower. I'm sorry.
Wow. I can't believe
I do
it's
not
that low
like
on your list.
the episode of Night in Terror Tower for a few reasons. Let me get it out of the way what I do like. I think Catherine Short and Corey Sevier do a really good job as Eddie and Sue. I think they are two good actors. I like the sets. I really like how this tower looks. I like when they go to medieval England and the look of everything. I like when they're being marched to be executed and you just kind of hear like all the prisoners just like shouting in agony. That's really good. Everything else is just uninteresting and boring and frankly confusing. This episode has some confusing... Okay, so you got these two kids, a prince and a princess. Their uncle kills their parents, the king and queen, kills their parents. The wizard Morgred sends them to the future, but doesn't give them complete memories. I know they try to say that it's because he was in a hurry just to get him out of there. But you send them to the future, they don't have full memories, they don't have parents, so it's like, what were you expecting to happen? It's like, eventually they were going to find out, and like, when does it start? Like, did they get transported to when the episode starts? Like, I don't know. And then everyone in England is a dick. Like, I don't know if you British people are like all just assholes to everybody. Everybody in the episode just is really mean to these two kids. Like the taxi driver, the concierge, the woman in that ugly pink like dress and large hat. And then I'll never forget the woman eating like the pastry and then just gets a little on her face. She's like, whoa. Like, there's so much overacting in this episode. It's just not one I can get into. I just think it's not very interesting. I think some of the plot points are really confusing. It's not, of the like 7 main ones on the like video, this is probably the one that I'm willing to watch the least. I don't hate it. I just don't like it. That's where I led on for this one. So get your torches and pitchforks ready. Sorry, Terror Tower is my number 14.
Here's a Simpsons reference for you. Simpsons movie when they were like, kill, for Homer. That's like you.
Going into this list, I knew that was going to be the one that like even you guys were going to be like, what the hell is he talking about?
Wow. Yeah, all I had in my head
Given
was...
the fact that there's still other episodes... Yeah. Given the fact that there's still other episodes that are on this list to choose from, I can't believe that's lower than you than some of them, but so...
Look, I know that there's probably going to be many people being like, but this is what that meant. Guys, I'm sorry. I just don't like this episode. Again, I don't hate it. This is not anywhere near my bottom 10. I will say that right now. But it's just not one that interests me. And I just don't find myself getting into it. It's just not one... And plain and simple, it's just not one I just find myself getting into. So, Terror Tower, that's my 14. I'm sorry if you don't agree, but that's where I landed for that one. Oh, what's your 14?
Off with your head. Off with your head.
I'm just dying to know.
Cry of the Cat. It's not like I really enjoyed it, but Cry of the Cat's my 14.
Okay.
So, I mean, I thought the monsters looked cool. But overall, yeah, I mean, it's another one that was just kind of like, I don't know, something about it to me, like, maybe it's because of my age at the time, and even now, like, I can watch it, I guess, but it's, I don't know, something just about a cat doesn't terrify me. Like, even the crazy cat lady at the end who's all mutated and stuff, I'm just like, ugh. It's like, get that fixed. It's like,
get that
like,
fixed.
God, your droopy eye, it's leaking.
I would just give
like,
one note to that person. I'd just say, fix it.
I feel like saying, geez,
Right.
do something about the way you look. You're starting to make me feel sick.
Oh,
what's wrong with you? Oh,
I love that.
fix that shit.
Someone has an utter disformity and like suffering throughout. You just go up to them and say, "Fix it."
Fix it.
At least you can sit
Fix
through it.
it.
Like that's me. I can sit through Cry the Cat at least. Like I can watch it.
I love that.
Yeah, I can too. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. It's another one that's kind of forgettable to me. But
Bottom tier.
The only things I remember are the monsters. Like, the best thing about them was the monsters. Like, although the weird, like, bat, cat, like, never skipped leg day, ab worked out creature that they made, like, I don't know, that was weird as shit, but it was the cat mom. Cat mom with the droopy eye. It's like she's allergic to cats and they made her a cat, so she's like always constantly like so it's really weird. I don't know. I just didn't. That's it. That's all I got for the cat because it wasn't all that great.
Sweet answer, Nick.
Right.
It's all good. I have a lot of those for the bottom list, and then I start to get more into really details.
Yeah, I know. That's same.
So, I mean, my number 14 is, I'm gonna say, How I Got My Shrunken Head. So it's funny. A lot of ours have been sort of similar. I must say, towards the bottom. Yours and I were basically the same, Nick, just in a slightly different order. But we're pretty much bottom three were like the same. Yeah. Again, you guys have already covered it, but yeah, I love the design. Oh, it's funny. I was going to mention about the Elvis too. Like that was cringy as. He's literally. Why is there a picture of him on the back of the DVD? Like all the things I could have picked.
He really stood out in that episode.
Yeah, I guess so. He was a memorable part of that episode. They had to make sure everybody knew.
One thing about this episode that, like, I always thought, it didn't feel like it was in the 90s. It felt like some early 2000s kids show, like 2001. It didn't feel like we were in the 90s in this particular episode. I don't know why. It just didn't feel like that. It felt like a show I would have watched when I was a kid, like 2001, 2002, like on some daytime prime viewing thing. That's what it felt like to me. I think we pretty much covered the bases on that. The shrunken head design was sick. I loved it. I wish I could get one of those, like a prop. That would be really cool. But yeah, Clear.
Well, and it's funny too.
There's nothing else to say. We covered it.
Well, it's funny too because after seeing how intricate, when we talked with Ron Stefanik about how intricate the Shrunken Head animatronic was, especially for how small it was, it's pretty interesting watching that episode now and just being like, wow, they really made that thing look cool. So it was definitely, that was probably the most memorable part of the episode. It's just everything else that was just kind of like, whatever. Okay, anyway.
There's redeeming qualities about the episode. Like, there's a lot of bad, but then there's one thing that's like, oh, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And the Shrunken Head is the cool part. You know what I mean? And that Flash game.
The funny thing is, now that I've revealed what my number 14 is, I wonder how you guys are going to feel about everything going up. But my number 13 is going to be Deep Trouble. I don't know, guys. I actually like Deep Trouble. Mostly because I think I'm going to be the unpopular one in this conversation.
It was the first one I ever watched as a kid.
No,
right?
I like this episode because I look at it through the lens of sort of like a 50s B movie in a way, especially down to the effects. There's a lot of scenes I like. I love the scene in the lab with the giant pufferfish that's shooting off the quills and it's like hitting all the lab equipment. I do find a charm in the photo, like the giant lizard and the giant crab. Especially when I think they like start fighting each other at one point. It becomes like a crab lizard battle. It's very reminiscent of a 50s B movie. And then I also love like when they go underground and there's all the fish creatures. There's the guy with the fish for a head. There's the lobster person with the giant lobster claw. And then there's that one, I don't know what the hell it is, but it's just got like like the big giant mouth. I
I don't know because I didn't sit through it all.
And I really like the ending. I think, especially for a character like Dr. Ritter, who's just kind of just a big asshole, I feel like it's definitely one of those. It's one of those endings that channels a lot of Tales from the Crypt and sort of the just desserts sort of ending, where now he is a fish person, and not only that, but he's being sold around in like carny shows. But I like that they're looking at him, they're like, that looks so fake. And then it pans over to him and he's like, I like it. I like this episode. I know you guys, find it boring. I find it interesting. I don't think it's perfect. There are many times where it kind of goes to the same slogging issues. But when it gets good, I like it. I think this is a pretty fun episode, if not anything else. So Deep Trouble is my number 13.
It just baffles me that ranks higher than Night in Terror Tower. But
well, at least Deep
okay.
Trouble was more interesting.
Agree to disagree.
Let's see. My 13 is The Ghost Next Door.
Hey, now we got another unpopular opinion over here.
But, like, not after you watch it like the first time, at least for me anyway, like, kind of start falling asleep as it goes on. It just, because I don't know, it's just one of those things, like, you watch it the first time, it's really interesting, but then as you have watched it a second or a third time, I fall asleep during it. Like, I don't know why. It's just because, not a whole lot happens, and you already know what's going to happen, so it's kind of like, But, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's one of those middle of the road ones for me. So, yeah, I mean, Ghost Next Door, number 13.
Funny you say that because that was my number 13. Ghost Next Door. I will admit, I actually watched this one a lot as a kid, like a lot. I still like it. It's a good episode. I didn't like how, I guess, I don't know. There's things about this episode that do stick out a little bit like a sore thumb that kind of aggravate me a little bit, like you said, Isaiah, and some of yours. There's little nitpicky things, but it doesn't take away from the overall story. I think it's actually a really traumatic story. And I think they handled it well, particularly at the end with the house fire and everything. I think they did a good job with that. And I think the actress who played Hannah was really good. I think she did a really good job. But yeah, I didn't like, the neighbor kids. They really pissed me off. I hated the mailman. It's like the dude was an absolute asshole. There's always that. Why is there always like an asshole character in like most Goosebumps episodes? I mean, his was more just because, like, obviously she was a ghost, couldn't see her. Spoiler alert. So that's the only reason why he would always, she couldn't get her letters to him. But anyway, I didn't think it was a bad episode. I didn't think it was a great episode. I think there was a lot going on for it. But yeah, I didn't really like the ghost, that kept, talking to Hannah. I thought like they could have done that a little better. I think they should have just put a dude in a big like black hoodie robe thing, kind of like R.L. Stine in the opening intro, as opposed to just a shadow. It's a pretty good episode. But yeah, I don't put it in the top 10, I guess.
I see.
It's bottom tier for me.
Well, moving on to number 12, my number 12, and I don't know if this is going to be another hot take or not. I like this episode. I'm going to preface this right now. I like this episode, but just because of what is in the book, it kind of seems like the episode just cannot follow through on the adaptation, at least for the first part. And my number 12 is going to be One Day at HorrorLand. Now, I am not a big fan of part 1. However, I don't not like it. I do like it. I'm just not a big fan of it. The unfortunate thing about doing HorrorLand in a show like the 90s show that had already a small budget is that they can't follow up on HorrorLand. They can't do a giant amusement park with all these big elaborate rides. So it ends up looking, I don't remember who said it, but somebody attributed the episode HorrorLand to being almost looking like a Christian like Bible camp. Because it kind of does. It's like...
It looks like a big park. Like a big, reserve.
Well, that's it. It looks like a park, but like a reserve park or like a trail park, not a theme park.
Yeah.
And the rides are not really that interesting. They do the Coffin Cruise and the House of Mirrors, and I just don't find either of them interesting. Even if they tried their hand at like the Doom Slide or even like a roller coaster, like of some kind, it's just like it would have been a little more interesting.
Ferris wheel.
But what saves part one for me is just I like that the parents are involved in the story. Most Goosebumps parents have nothing to do with the story. It's usually just the kids. I like that you get a few scenes with the mom and dad in this, and they're actually a little... I like the dad just kind of being like, oh, everything's fine, like, we're all good. Let the kids go off on their own. And then the mom's kind of like the one who's like, I don't know if I really want to be here. And then they got that amazing scene when they get the monster punch. I love that scene. I love it. Because it's such a gross out moment, but the guy serving him the punch is just so, like, cheery. And he's like, 2 monster punches coming right up.
Shout out, Ron.
Yep, that was Ron Stefanik. Yep, did a great job on that one. And so part one is just a little slow, but it does the job. Part two saves this episode for me. Part two is fun as hell. It's funny, it's cheesy, it's corny. I think just the idea of being on a monster game show is really fun, even though it kind of throws away the whole theme park thing in the second part. And honestly, the ending chase when they're like escaping HorrorLand is honestly pretty tense. Like when they're running through and they're like getting to the car and you just have all these horrors running after them and like pounding on the car doors. It's kind of tense. And then it ends with the family, ambiguously maybe dying because they're hanging off a cliff in their car. So it's a pretty dark ending too. But no, even though it's at number 12, I like this episode. I wish they could do more with it, but I understand why they couldn't just because of budget. Which makes me hope that someday we get a much higher budget version of the story. But we'll see what happens. Yeah. But for now...
They could make just a movie on that. One Day at HorrorLand could be a movie.
Yeah.
Like a feature-length film. That's one of the few books that could.
Well, even the 2008 video game, I'm not a big fan of that game, but the park looks interesting. And there's a lot of very creative, like, attractions there. And even the HorrorLand book series, like, really did a lot to flesh it out. It just sucks we haven't had like a TV or movie adaptation that really got the spirit of this book down. But I like the episode. I think it's pretty decent. But it lands at my number 12 on this list. So
I don't think that's a hot take. I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously ranked a little higher on mine, but not by much. But my number 12 is Attack of the Mutant. So... Because while, again, like we talked about, the first part, so slow. But what saves it for me is Adam West, even though he's not in it a whole bunch. As someone who grew up on Batman and the Adam West and Michael Keaton's and all that stuff. It was really awesome to see him in a Goosebumps episode. And then on top of that, Scott Wickware's amazing performance of, the Masked Mutant. Just... freaking sold part two for me. But again, when you got 3/4 of both parts together where it's just really slow and it takes forever to get to that, again, it's another one that could have got brought down to one part and it would have been fine. Because you could have taken, that first 3/4 that was really slow and sucked and condensed it down into maybe the first half of just one episode, and then just kept the second half of that second part. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. I like the costumes. I like the over-the-top villain and hero really being campy. Again, like you said, Isaiah, the settings were amazing. Like I don't know where they filmed all that at. I think Scott said it's actually like a factory or something. That's not there anymore though. But oh man, it looked really cool the way they lit everything and had all that stuff in there. So for that reason alone, I mean those reasons alone. Attack of the Mutant, number 12.
And here's the thing about Attack of the Mutant is that you're absolutely right. They could have condensed part 1 and half of part 2 into like 15 minutes. Like, think about it. So, like, Skipper gets the book. He sees, like, the gazelle is, like, calling for him. Then he's on the bus. He meets Libby. They both get off. They see the Masked Mutant headquarters. Go inside. Maybe a little bit of exploring. Then he finds the gazelle. The mutant appears, reveals itself to be Libby, and then the climax happens. Like,
right.
Cut out all the fat, and then you have a perfectly fine episode. But still, I also still think that Tale of Gas and Grinner from Are You Afraid of the Dark is a better take on the evil superhero. Like, it's like 10 times better.
You and I really think alike, Nick, because mine next on the list is Attack of the Mutant. But there are things about this. Now, we've talked about all the bad, so I'm not going to say anything bad more about it because we've already established it. But I'm going to talk about the things I liked about the episode. Now, I liked that the Masked Mutant looked just like the cover of the book. I liked that the headquarters looked just like the cover of the book. That was great. Mm-hmm. So someone was keeping a close eye on Tim's art when designing this episode. We don't know what the inside looked like other than just what you read, but they did a good job with that. And I like the representation of Goosebumps within this episode. There is a double-decker bus in one scene where there's literally a big giant banner, 2 thumbs up, Goosebumps. And I like that. But yeah, we've covered all the bad, but yeah, those are the things I'm going to say that really stuck out with this episode was, goddamn, like, you look at the cover of the book and you watch the episode and you're like, yeah, the costume looks just like the Masked Mutant's costume. The headquarters looks just like what you see on the book. So, yeah, like, I give credit to that side of things. They definitely did their homework there with the design for, what you see. So, yeah, Masked Mutant was next on my list.
My number 11 is another one that I enjoyed more than you guys did. My number 11 is Cry the Cat. Just like Deep Trouble, I look at this through the lens of something else. In this case, I like that this took a different approach from the book in that it makes it into a sort of meta take on not only, like Hollywood movies, of course, but it almost is kind of like a meta take on Goosebumps itself. I mean, this was like, I think the penultimate episode of the series, and it just kind of seems like the production of a Goosebumps episode. They're trying to make something like based off the Cry of the Cat. Like, that's how I think of it. I think the jokes are pretty witty and snappy. I think everybody is really like funny in their personas. I like how the director is just kind of, like running all around. He's kind of done with everyone. He's always shouting at people, especially the prop guy. Like, I love how the prop guy or whoever gets like no breaks in this episode. I like Corey Sevier. I just love how everyone just kind of seems done with everything in this episode. Everyone's like all pissed off and angry, but I like it. But even down to like the horror aspect, I love the design of the actual cat. I love that it's so gross and deformed that it doesn't look like a cat anymore. And I love, you're right, the effect on the mom with the half cat face is grotesque and amazing. I love it. I love the ending of this episode. It's like one of the most delicious, no pun intended, twist endings of the Goosebumps TV series. And that line by Corey, I love a good twist ending, is a great way to close out that episode. I liked it. I like that this one got a little more meta. It is kind of like the Scream 3 of Goosebumps.
That's why I liked it. Yeah, the vibe was similar.
Yeah, so I think this was a good one. I really liked it. Don't know if I liked it more than the book. I think I still might prefer the book over the episode. But I think it was a good adaptation. I like that they changed a few things. I think they actually made the story a little more able to stand on its own. And I liked it. So Cry the Cat, number 11 for me.
Number 11, One Day at Horrorland. And it's lower on my list because of things you've said, but like at the same time, like I don't know, like I love the people who played the horrors. I love the people who played the family. You know, especially the game show aspect of it. I just thought Neil Crone freaking was hilarious and killed it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Booger surprise.
and I did. I really enjoyed the ending to like, are they gonna fall off the cliff? We'll find out next time. But you don't find out. You just left hanging, like literally just left hanging. It's like
Hanging?
yeah, literally left hanging. So it is a cliffhanger. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
One Day at Horrorland, number 11.
Well, funny you should say that, Nick. Because One Day at Horrorland's my number 11 too. This is what I mean by we're thinking very similar here. I actually really enjoyed this episode for a lot of things. I love the creature design of the horrors. Not so much the one with like the weird snake eyes, which I'm assuming is meant to be like the females, but like the ones like the actual male, you know, one like the one that Neil Crone played, for instance, the horror, you know. I think, you know, they looked phenomenal. I absolutely love it. I still wish Trick or Treat Studios would give us a horror
Me too.
mask from.
That'd be awesome.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's
that
the
would
thing.
be really, really.
The ones with the yellow eyes.
You guys
the
are
ones
listening to this. Trick or Treat Studios.
Yep. If you guys are
horror
listening.
masks.
The ones with
We
the
want
yellow
the
eyes
horror-
are not ones with moving mouths either. So it's, you know,
Okay.
yeah, like that one has like all the facial features, so they can actually emote. The ones with the yellow eyes are just kind of like the static face, and that's fine. But it's definitely better when you can like see the expression, especially in like
Right.
in like the game show host. What was it, Reg Smith or Spit or something like that? It was some kind of gross name.
Something like that.
Didn't he also play the other guy that gets mauled by Ripper?
Yeah, so it's
did, yeah.
Neil Crone also played. He played the two different horrors. He played the one that was trying to help the Morris family, like to get them out of there.
And then he gets freaking eaten.
And he also played Raw Deal. Raw. So
Like,
but I love that whole sequence. I love when they do the monster show and they show the different commercials, and it's like human toys, action figures. You can smash them up and everything. Like I thought that was fun and like
when the the monster love songs.
Oh yes, thank you.
The monster love ballad.
Yeah, and like got the plate of
So
food,
good.
and it's like would you like some booger surprise? And I'm just like, that was an episode that I think they had fun with.
It leaned
You know
on
what
the
I mean?
cheese
Like,
factor,
let's
and
have
I
fun.
love
Let's
that.
take Goosebumps.
They really had.
It scared me.
It's probably the funniest episode of the show. Like in terms of comedy, I think this episode had a lot of really like cute, fun like jokes in it. So going into the top 10, these are. I mean, I would say this is when things start getting good, but honestly, I mean, with like number 13, we were kind of in good territory already. But rounding the bottom of my top 10 is going to be Ghost Next Door. I like this one for like what it does. It is definitely the most dramatic of the Goosebumps episodes. It's one that has a lot of really heavy material in it. Like just the idea of not only like, you know, finding out you're dead, but a kid finding out you're dead and you're alone. Like you don't have your family with you. You're roaming Earth as a ghost. And it's pretty dark. I mean, even the end when she's rescuing Danny from the fire and he almost dies and there's like EMTs and everything like that. It's like it gets very real for a Goosebumps episode. And the ending's sad. I mean, like even though it's sad in a sense of like, you know, Hannah's moving on, she's with her family again, and you know Danny's saying goodbye to his friend. It's a very sad episode. I personally like the effect of the shadow ghost. I like the effect personally. I know you weren't a big fan of it, Bjorn, but I personally liked it. And I always remembered when I first watched this episode, the ending of part 1, when Hannah finds out that she's the ghost and not Danny, is like a massive like what? Like it's actually
That's
a really
Sixth
good
Sense
twist
kind of thing.
It is like a Sixth Sense sort of thing. So, I like this episode. I think, in a season of mostly, like, really campy, you know, like, goofy episodes, the fact that they ended the series with, like, something like this, is pretty interesting. So, it's my, number 10 pick for this list.
Nick, what's number 10? So I can
Perfect School.
Perfect School is number 10. Wow.
Yeah, I actually really like that one, and it was tough because when you get to the top 10, there's a lot of good episodes to really pick from. And Perfect School, like, I don't know, like, when I was a kid, it wasn't one of my favorites because, again, it didn't really have monsters per se. And of course, that's what I wanted as a kid. I was like, no, there's no monsters. But, you know, it grew on me. So, like, I actually really quite enjoy it. And I was kind of sad that we never really got a sequel to it based on how it ended. Even if it had to be, like, its own thing. Because it's not like every episode of the Goosebumps 90s show was based on a book. They did a few that were, but they were short stories. But not so much an actual book. So I was kind of disappointed we never got something more with Perfect School, but I really actually enjoyed that quite a bit. I thought the acting was really good. I thought the story was really good. And again, it's just one that grew on me. So number 10, Perfect School.
Good episode. We did get a sequel. Brian O'Connor became Wexler in Resident Evil. Oh, man.
Interesting.
Not the sequel we thought was going to happen.
The virus was actually constructed inside the Perfect School's basement, where they had all the chemicals. No. My number 10 is Werewolf Skin. So yeah, Werewolf Skin. I love this episode.
Werewolf Skin.
Yeah. Love episode number 10.
They like my blood.
They like my blood. No, the best line in Werewolf Skin is, yeah, dies. Come on, I mean, Arjun is the greatest character in the entire Goosebump universe. Do not deny it. That guy was like a 10 out of 10 performance.
That guy died for your sins.
That episode, like, that was actually one of the ones that never came out here in Australia. But I somehow got a hold of it when I was really young, though. I don't even remember how. I must have ordered it online, well, at the time, I wasn't ordering things online. It would have been my parents, so I'm assuming maybe one of them bought it. Like, they saw it on eBay one day and was like, oh, this is one that he doesn't have, and they got it. And, of course, so we're in the ultimate Goosebumps era, too, here. But, no, I really, really enjoyed the episode. I think the kid that played Alex was really great. I think the bullies were really funny. Like, they reminded me kind of like, I don't know, what's their names again on Power Rangers? Two doofuses.
Bulk and Skull.
Yeah, they kind of gave me that Bulk and Skull kind of a, you know, like, dynamic there, like, with the two of them. You know, you had the one that was slightly more dumb, which was Arjun, of course. But I love the design of the werewolves in this, and this has obviously one of the most infamous, creepiest scenes in the whole Goosebumps TV show was when they come up to the window and they just start, like, grabbing on the bars and they're trying to get in, you know, to Alex. Like, that scene gave me nightmares as a kid. I mean, there's a lot of scenes in Goosebumps that did, but that one really did as well. Like, I think I had a dream of that at one point where it was literally just, like, them right in my face, and I remember waking up going, oh, my God. Sure enough, my mom was probably screaming at my dad.
Always confused me.
What was it?
That scene always confused me. Because Alex, his room is on the second floor.
Yeah.
But their arms are inside trying to get him, so what the hell are they standing on?
Each other. One of them's down there, like, you got him yet?
Is that what it is? It's just
this
like,
episode was great.
Oh, God,
like,
hurry up.
I love the scene where
God, please tell me you got him. You're heavy as hell.
No, it's a good episode. I like when he's trying to, like, bury them and their arms are coming out of the ground, and but no, I think my favorite scene, to be completely honest, on the whole episode is with the bus driver. when she's like telling him the story about the headless
She made her
ghost.
time count, didn't she?
She did. Like when she's talking the story about the headless ghost in the woods, like in the back of my head. I was like, far out, man. That woman deserves an Oscar, like for this performance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think even just the little things with that episode- have a nice day. Doesn't she say "Have a nice day"? Or have a nice, she says, "Have a nice night," right?
Or something like that, yeah.
Oh my god! Is it "Have a nice day"? Have a nice night.
It's
Have a nice night. Yeah, and I can't remember if like she said day, and I remember thinking like, did she say day when it's nighttime? Like, well, she said nighttime, but no. Anyway, but yeah, no, that episode was really good. And
my number 9 is going to be an episode that I really, really like. And again, this is just getting into the fact that like the way we're ranking these. If we were ranking the entire series, it'd be way higher. It's just perspective of the ranking. With that said, my number 9 is going to be Haunted Mask 2. Now, Haunted Mask 2, I think, is a great follow-up. I think there's a lot of things in this episode to like. I think all 4 of the kids do a great job. I think Scott Wickware does a great job as the Haunted Mask. Or rather, the Haunted Mask taking over the shopkeeper. I like that this one is a little more, it does a little more with, like, the trick-or-treaters this time around. I like that Steve is just kind of, like, embracing sort of the, you know, the assholishness that comes with wearing the mask. I like that this one takes more of a body horror aspect, because he becomes an old man as he has the mask on longer. And I really like the climax in the cemetery. I think it's a great, both this and the first one, having climaxes in the cemetery, I think really help it. But it's a great episode. I think it's a great follow-up. It's just not, I don't think it's as good as the original. I mean, I feel like that's probably a given. But I still really enjoy this. I love watching this and the first one back to back on Halloween night. But yeah, Haunted Mask 2, number 9.
My number 9 is Night in Terror Tower. That one, I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit before. Mostly your general disdain for it, but I actually really like it. But mostly because I think I like a lot of medieval stuff. So the story to me was good. I didn't find too much of it confusing. I do agree, though, that a lot of those people in London were pricks. I don't understand why they were dicks the entire time.
Yeah, the 2 children, like, what? Children are looking for their parents, and they're just like, can I check into this hotel, please? And they're like, well,
you
why
need a coat on to come in this room, kid.
I love that shot of the concierge
coat
from, like, the fisheye lens. You know what I mean? He's like, when you find out who you are, come back. I'll be glad to help you. It's like, wow, what a dick.
Yeah, it's like, well, I ain't coming back to this hotel again.
Yeah, like, Jesus.
Who's your manager, buddy?
4 stars.
Like, I am the manager.
Right. I am the manager. No, I actually really enjoyed it. It's not one I watch on the regular because, again, it is a bit slower. There's not as much action. It's mostly just running away until they unveil the actual backstory to their lives and all this stuff, and that's where it gets interesting. But that's really only the last 10 minutes, roughly, of the both parts. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Again, I'm a sucker for medieval stuff too, so that kind of plays a factor.
Yeah, no, mine's the same as yours, Isaiah. My number 9 is The Haunted Mask 2. It's light years from The Haunted Mask 1.
Wow.
Light years. You know what I mean? The first one is, like, so iconic. The second one is also iconic, but it's not really much more for me to add other than it does accent the first one well to watch them. Do you know what I mean? And I wish we could get a Haunted Mask 3, Catherine, and you could play the mum. That would be great. So someone out there, write the script, we'll Goosebumps Crew production. The Goosebumps Crew will make it.
I think my ultimate thing with Haunted Mask 2 is just that it doesn't have the nuance of Haunted Mask 1. Haunted Mask 1 has a very, like, it does have a nuanced story. Even Catherine Long was like, it was like, wow, I'd never thought of it anywhere deeper like that. but like,
I love spiders. And that's why I do like the episode, because I love spiders. So I love the whole concept of the old man hair with the spiders crawling through. I'm like,
that was a good scene. I like that. But I think it's just also again, it just doesn't have the nuance. It doesn't have like the really deep implications of it. It's definitely played off more like a traditional Goosebumps story, you know, with the body horror and the villain of the haunted mask. I just think it kind of tries to be more like that, but it kind of throws the nuance of the first one kind of out the window. But I don't know. It doesn't mean I don't love it. It's just I think the original kind of trumps it in almost every way. And you know, I have a few other picks before it. Speaking of those picks, my number 8 is going to be Werewolf Skin. Now, I like this one very much. I like how this one... I mean, it's just a great concept for an episode. Just taking the werewolf concept, but you have to wear the skin in order to become the werewolf. And I guess what I can add to that is just I love every character in this episode. I think everyone just like when they get their time to shine, they get their time to shine. And there's a lot of memorable performances. I love the scene where Alex just has those back-to-back nightmares, and one of them is his teacher coming up, and then all of a sudden he just has like, like that's creepy.
It made me think of like an American Werewolf in London. If you've ever watched that before, that's really what it made me think of, with the teeth and the face and everything. Like, I was like,
it's very reminiscent of the scene in American Werewolf with the, you know, like that. And
that was scary too. Yeah, that was really scary, that part.
I mean, you guys already mentioned the window scene, which I love. I think that's a great way to close out part 1 and open part 2 back up. But something that really creeps me out is just the aunt and uncle when he's trying to bury the skins, and they come out and they just are like, their eyes are sunk and they're just like in a state. They're just like, give us our skins. Like, it's very creepy that they're just like hobbling toward him, just like, give them to us.
She said they felt cold. Like, they were feeling
like,
cold.
It's so cold. It's like, it's actually like really disturbing. I don't know, but Werewolf Skin is my number 8. I really like this one. I think it was a good idea, and I like it. So,
well, for the first time in this whole list, Isaiah, we have the same number. Number 8's Werewolf Skin. Honestly, like, I love werewolf stories. Probably my favorite of the classic monsters, if you will, compared when you think like Dracula and, you know, all that stuff. I mean, I do love werewolves. Creature from the Black Lagoon is probably my favorite Universal monster, but I will say, like, as far as monsters go, just in general, werewolves are probably my favorite. I just find them really fascinating. So yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. Werewolf Skin was really good. Everybody played their part to practically perfection, and I love the fact that, like, after Alex finds out that his aunt and uncle are werewolves, that like the next day at the breakfast table, like everything you see is like 3 little pigs, syrup, and they're having bacon, and it's like, oh no, we had a bite last night. And it just like zooms in. It's like
the editing and the music in this episode is so good. I love it so much.
Yes. I mean, I like. There's a lot of like little things. He's like, "Oh shit, I gotta get to school." It's like, "You're gonna be late for school. It's 7:00." It's like they're confused, but he's like, "Fuck, I'm out of here." So I mean, I thought it was. Yeah, no, he likes that Hannah girl, and finding out that, you know, she's a lady in the street but a werewolf in the sheets. So he's all for that. But yeah. Man, it was a good episode, man. I really, really enjoyed it.
Next on my list, one of my absolute favorite episodes is The Perfect School. This is not The Perfect School to cover, just so you know. That's The Haunted School. But this is a personal favorite of mine. And like you said, Nick, very similar to what you said about it. When I was a kid, I watched it, you know, when I was like 8, 9, whatever it was. when I watched it as an adult, it became one of the greatest episodes. Because like Ron Oliver said, they loved it so much they made it a two-parter. You know what I mean? Like, they wanted it to be longer. Like, this could have been a movie. Do you know what I mean? The concept, the idea. This is one of the few Goosebumps episodes that could have been turned into like a feature-length film, and you wouldn't have even had to have Goosebumps in the title. It could have been anything. It could have just been The Perfect School. And I think it would have been successful, you know? So, yeah, like, I love this episode so much. It's the idea of, imagine being sent to a school and they are literally cloning you. And then they're going to stuff you into a basement prison where you'll have to live out the rest of your life, where the fake you goes home to your parents. That concept is so genius. I love it. It makes me wonder if the school systems will eventually start doing that, because there's so many fuckwits in the world that are like growing up now, and you just think, how are you ever going to, like, you see some kids today and you go, like, what even are you? Like, how the hell are you ever going to, like, fit into society one day? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to either end up on drugs or in prison or whatever. You know what I mean? And I'm like, eventually the school system's just going to have to figure out a way to clone actual kids. So make sure they don't ever watch this, because, do you know what I mean? Like, that idea is just, it's truly terrifying. And I love the way this episode was shot. I love all the hall scenes when he's walking down the hallway or he's running down the hallway. You know, the only character I hated was that four-eyed friend. I wouldn't call him a friend. He was a bit of a douchebag, you know. But, yeah, I think it was a triumph in the Goosebumps TV series. Yeah, perfect school. Love it. Love it. Love it.
My number 7 is going to be... I have such nostalgic feelings for this episode. Through and through. It was actually the first VHS that I owned was of this episode. And it's an utter classic. Stay Out of the Basement. It's my number 7. I love the concept of this episode. I love the body horror aspect of finding out your dad is a plant. The scene where she is looking at him in the bathroom and he's got the leaves growing out of his head, and then you see him bleeding green. It's very creepy. I love how much the dad is, like, super, super creepy in this one. Just the way he just, like, looks at everyone, and it's just, like, he's so I don't know how to explain it, but it's just, like, the idea of your dad, you're home, you and your dad starts acting weird, and then you see him doing weird things, like eating plant food, and then, like, just, like, every which way he's just looking at you with, like just angry, like just such discontent in his eyes. Not to mention the fact that he's just in the basement doing weird things, working with plants. The basement is covered in green lighting.
The botanist, he studies plants.
Yeah.
It's the setting.
Yeah, well, I know that, but all the time. But I love the setting of this episode. I love how they do lightning at certain parts in this episode. I love the scene with the worms on the bed. It is a super gross image.
I loved how Alan, when we had him on, told us how they did that, because I always wondered that later growing up. As a kid, I was just like, oh yeah, it's not too hard to make worms wiggle. But to get that many to do for that scene, it was interesting to find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly was. And even the basement itself, I love just how green everything was, the green lighting. I love the hand plant, like the plant that looked like the hand and it, like, grabbed the crowbar. And then the one that opened up with the face inside is super disturbing. This episode rules body horror, so I love it. I think it's a classic episode through and through. It's always one I'm in the mood to put on. So Stay Out of the Basement is my number 7.
Okay, 2 in a row, Isaiah. What's happening here? Number 7, Stay Out of the Basement. I mean, everything you said and then some. I mean, it kept me enthralled the entire time. Like, I remember watching the episode, but then when I bought the VHS, I mean, I watched it a lot. I mean, there was something fascinating about it. But yeah, I mean, like, the fact that like when she got cut down in the basement, and that was the face that you saw later, is because like it was making a duplicate of her, just like it did with her dad. So, and then you always wonder, is like, oh man, what happened to their dad's friend, the doctor who came by, and I can't remember his name right now.
Dr.
But
Merrick.
it's like, yeah, it's like, oh man, did they kill Merrick? And like, when you're thinking the whole time, I was like, man, what did he do with him? Because he wasn't in the basement at the time when they went down there. So it's like, did he feed him to the other plants? I was like, this is kind of wild.
Well,
Like, but then
funny.
the concept of just making everyone into a plant double, you know, it was interesting. I mean, honestly, it made me think of like Poison Ivy from Batman doing that in the Batman animated series and stuff like that, because she did something similar. Now, I don't know which came first, the Goosebumps episode or the Batman episode, but either way, it's still an interesting concept. And yeah, I think I'd be questioning, like, Dad's trying to make me eat this nasty ass spinach vegetable thing
about that
looks like throw up. He's bleeding green. He's got plants growing out of his head. I think it's time to call the police. And the fact that the mom doesn't even want to like listen to the kids too just cracks me up.
Yeah,
like, that's
it's
gonna be
like,
the
oh, I'm
worst
sure it has some
mom in the world.
like dad was eating plant food, like toxic chemicals for plants. Oh, I'm sure it's just part of his work. It's like, lady, when at some point do you start questioning what your husband's doing? Like, really think about that for a second.
I think this is the first round where we've all had the same answer for number 7.
You got it too?
Oh wow.
Basement.
Okay.
But you guys have covered everything, so I'll just cover a couple other little fun facts about the episode, shall we say. The video game that Casey's playing is actually Welcome to Camp Nightmare. When you've got like the forest and you've got the explosion when Uncle Al shoots the gun. That's actually just literally a clip from Camp Nightmare, and they made it look like a video game. So that's an interesting little thing. Judah Katz, the dude who played Dr. Brewer, is one of the greatest actors in the whole fucking Goosebumps
He's
show.
creepy. He can be creepy.
So good. So good. And I hope we get him on the podcast at some point. The scene where Margaret like gets out of bed to go and like, you know, inspect what her dad's doing, and she sees the green ooze coming out of his arm and sees the leaves growing out of his head. That just screams Goosebumps. The green goo literally coming out of his arm. I'm like, this is Goosebumps. You know what I mean? 100%. And then when she like runs back to bed, and he like follows her in. And when he's just standing there staring at her,
creepy.
The way the music is playing, between panning to him, panning back to her, panning back to him, it's like so perfectly orchestrated.
Going into my number 6 spot, I really like this episode. I'll be honest, going into the list tonight, I actually had this much higher, but I bumped it down a few notches after thinking about it a little bit and, you know, talking about the other episodes a little more. But my number 6 is going to be Perfect School. I like Perfect School a lot. I think for taking a short story and making it an hour-long episode, they did a fantastic job. I love how this episode is directed. I mean, it's basically what you guys said. The directing is good. The acting is good. I love how tense this episode is. Like, even before you get to, like, the weird clone stuff, like, just the idea of being in this really, really hardcore boarding school, and part 1 ending with, you know, like, Brian getting injected, and, like, it's like, what the hell's going on? And then I will never ever forget him running down the hall and running into his clone covered in like vat juice and just being like, you're not going anywhere. Like, that's horrifying. That's terrifying. And it's another dark concept. But this is also an episode that has probably the only positive twist ending in Goosebumps. Like, think about that. Most twist endings like usually don't go well for a certain character. But this one is like, oh, wow, he actually managed to escape, and nobody suspects. Oh, and he's hacking in so he can get everyone out? Hey, that's not a bad ending. That's a pretty good ending. So, I like Perfect School. I think it's a really good episode, a really good adaptation, and pretty underrated episode, too. Like, again, most people talk about, like, some of the other ones that we've listed today, but I don't hear many people bring up this one. So, I think this is definitely one people need to really mention more, because it deserves a lot of love.
Kind of similar to what you said about this one was higher, but I actually moved it. But my number 6 is Night of the Living Dummy 3. Because I enjoyed it quite a bit, obviously. I mean, it's one I can watch on the regular if I wanted to, but, you know, it's just, I think it fell shorter than some of these other episodes for one reason or another. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they didn't use a Slappy, like, puppet the entire time, and they kept changing out, and it was kind of jarring to the sense of, like, having the suit actor to having the dummy, and then even multiple dummies, because some were different sizes, some looked different. So I wasn't a fan of that, but I mean, I like all the actors. Even the part where you know, they're super scared of Slappy in that moment. So
great acting.
You know, you could definitely see it. You could definitely see it in their faces and how they screamed. I mean,
yeah, the sheer
they
terror.
Sold me on
sheer
it.
terror.
Sheer terror.
Yeah. No.
But it's one of those episodes I think was productionally very well done. The effects I thought were pretty good for what they were using them for. Except for, again, you know, like I said, when there's little accidents like the whole Zane sitting in the chair, but it's actually like Hayden Christensen, like
it is,
and he's sitting like this.
Like, they drew like 2 lines on his face.
Well, and he's smiling. It looks like he's smiling, but the dummy itself is like really terrified.
Dummy. Like I don't know. Like I just thought that was obviously an editing error, but
I want someone to show him that picture, like of just that, and be like, "So, what do you think of this?"
So it was like, what was the thought process behind this performance right here?
My number 6. How do you even do 6? Because it's like they're all good. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you do the bottom 6, 7? Because it's like they're all really iconic and everyone loves these ones. I got Fever Swamp as number 6. Again, like I said, how the hell do you rank these last few? How do you? It's not possible for me to do this. You know what I mean? You guys have pretty much already sort of, you know, I don't know what well, for Fever Swamp, to me, was the first episode I watched where it felt different. In a good way. In a very good way. The opening score with the down, I was like, whoa, what the hell? Like, this is different immediately.
That deliverance vibe.
Yeah, like it jumped to that. And this episode was one of the first ones that really scared me, because it was one of the first VHS tapes I got. The Swamp Hermit absolutely traumatized me. Like when he kidnaps him, and just the shots of him where he'd be looking in the camera and he's just like mm-hmm. I'm like, can you imagine that dude like chasing after you? Like, and when he's chasing Grady like all awkwardly, he's like you know what I mean? Like, how's that guy gonna catch? Like, how does the old guy like that catch like a young 12, 13-year-old? But anyway, but yeah, no, I really love the design of the werewolf, and he's a werewolf. I love the soundtrack in this one's actually one of my absolute favorites. I think this is probably one of my favorite soundtracks in the entire Goosebumps world. Not just the movies and the show and the new 2023, like in general. I think this is one of my favorite Goosebumps soundtracks. I love everyone in this. Everyone did a 10 out of 10 performance with their acting. The actor that played Grady, for instance, he killed it. He was 100%. Like, you know, why was it so hard for these parents to believe that, like, you know, a dog ripping down that fence? Like, come on, like, seriously, that's the one thing where I'm like,
no.
Okay, even a freaking German Shepherd couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, this is ridiculous. So,
I'm pretty sure that's what breed that dog was too. It looked like a Shepherd, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
but who knows?
But, no, this is a fantastic episode, and again, it's like this was hard for me to put it even here at this spot. But you know, we're getting into that top 5 tier now, which is where we're really getting into that. You know.
Well, let's get into it. Why don't we? My number 5 is an episode that I really like, and actually, I'm actually a little surprised by where you guys ranked it among that specific line of episodes. My number 5 is Night of the Living Dummy 3. This is actually my favorite Slappy episode. I actually like this one the most. I would say Living Dummy 3, then 2, then Bride, I would say. But I like them all. I think they're all good. But Night of the Living Dummy 3 I like. I think it's really good, and I also think it's better than the book for one specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Zane is not a little asshole in this episode like he is in the book. I really like the camaraderie between the three main characters. I think when they finally kind of like put their differences aside, I think they really, work well together. The scene where when Zane is like, "Have you ever played this game?" He's like, "No." And he's like, "Well, here, let me show you." I don't know. It's just like, those three kids kind of getting along is very nice. I like the parents. I think the parents get a lot of really good jokes in. It's like, oh, it looks like our crisis has been averted. We didn't even need to call the National Guard. And even the dad, the dad is just goofy because he's the ventriloquist, so he's like doing stuff with Slappy is like...
Wears a bow tie.
He's like, his wife is like, "Dan, are you listening to me?" He's like, "Are you listening to her?" It's really funny. And I think Cal Dodd does a good job as Slappy. I think Eugene Lipinski does a good job playing Rocky. I think Rocky's a really fun character. It's nice to have Slappy, having a henchman, just for the kind of character Slappy is, just to have someone to boss around and be like, "You idiot," or like, who said you could laugh?" It's a great one. I love the climax. I love Rocky beating the tar out of Slappy and then throwing him out the window. I think that's hilarious. I don't know. It's just a really fun episode. I really like it. I always put it on. It's my number 5. I love this episode quite a bit.
It's your background Goosebumps episode. Put in the background.
Yeah, I could.
True. My number 5, Welcome to Dead House. This was my top 5. It's tough. To be honest, this almost made it a step higher to my number 4, but the number 4 spot actually, well, when we get there, I'll tell you why, but Welcome to Dead House, oh man, just overall so good. There's nothing bad, honestly, I could say about it. There's just about everything in it I really enjoyed. Like we've talked about in different episodes, because we've had on Scott Wickware and we've had on Marilyn Smith with Scott in the same episode, and then we've had Ian Clark. Of course, we haven't gotten any of the lead kid actors yet from that episode. Talking to you, Ben Cook. But anyway,
Ben Cook.
So we man, when we started doing this whole like, hey, let's make a list, I'm like, man, it was tough when I got down to the 5. I love everything about it though, like, and I love the progression that you see these characters making. Like, they're kind of pale and they're kind of weird, but it's like, okay, yeah, all right. Some of them look more normal than others, and you're kind of trying to figure out why. None of them like sunlight, so apparently there's zombie vampires, like we've talked about before, which is also weird. But, compared to the book, I like both the book and what they did with the episode. I've got nothing bad to say about it.
My next one, my number 5, is A Night in Terror Tower.
Now I know you guys had a little lower on your list. I got a little higher on my list. Again, when we've already sort of covered. It's like, well, there's not really much else to say other than I really enjoyed this one. I like that all the English guys were assholes.
You're from Australia, man. Everyone's an asshole.
Yeah, maybe I relate to this episode more because we're all assholes here. But no, like, I think it was a really well done one. It felt like a big production. Like when you watch Goosebumps, and certain episodes, and you go, oh yeah, this was probably a shoestring. Oh yeah, this looks like they didn't put much time or effort in. This one looked like they put time and effort in to make something. You know what I mean? Like even the props that they used. Like they looked so great. Like I love the scene. Of course, when they go back in time, they travel back and they're in the big courtyard and there's all the extras and stuff. I thought that was really well done. The guy who played the Executioner, phenomenal. Love you, man. Wish we could have you on, but of course. It just, I don't know. This episode to me, I think it's nostalgia as well that really plays a big part. Because this was the very first Goosebump VHS I ever got. I think it's a great episode. I think it was really well done in terms of an episode. And I think everyone brought their A game between the crew, the cast, the writers of this episode. I think everyone really brought it, like their best performance to every department when making this episode. So it's a personal favorite of mine. It's very nostalgic. And yeah, like I said, it was the first VHS I ever owned of Goosebumps. So it's top 5. It sits there. 100%.
Understandable. Absolutely. My number 4 is Werewolf of Fever Swamp. I love this one. I love the setting. I love how isolated this episode is. I agree. I think the parents are idiots. Because number one, look, a dog can't, number one, tear through a giant fence. Metal, iron gated, or wood, can't take a bite out of wood. So the fact that they're thinking, like, oh, this dog did it. Oh, it's going to take, like, and there's, like, we're going to have to catch all these deer. It's like, are you not concerned about the possible wild animal on your premises? I love the soundtrack in this episode. I love both, like, like the guitar, like, picks for, like, sort of the, like, country-ass sort of thing. They did it also in How to Kill a Monster. But also the guitar riffs when, especially in the climax, when the chases are going on, just like, and, like, the high percussion, the chase that, when the werewolf is in the house, and you see it's just, like, arched over the couch, and then you see, like, the claws, and then just flip a switch, and all of a sudden there's a chase going on from the POV of the werewolf. It's tense. And then it moves on to the chase in the woods with Grady, and then, I don't know, it just, like, everything after that moment just amps. And I don't know, it's an episode that I just love putting on. It always is, like, a big thrill. And I love it. I love the setting. I love the werewolf prosthetics and the costume and the makeup. One of my favorite R.L. Stine closings, too. Just with the werewolf hand saying, like, goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.
Werewolf of Fever Swamp, my number 4. Love this episode. Great episode.
Can that be our new intro song? The bow, 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 and just have the Goosebumps crew, like, that could be the new intro music. I don't know, it sounds cool.
Backwoods banjoing, like I said, Deliverance, it's so my number 4 is Welcome to Camp Nightmare. And like I said, this is one I could easily swap with Welcome to Dead House because both are good for different reasons. But Welcome to Camp Nightmare, like, the whole storytelling aspect of it, like, is awesome. Like, and all the characters, even down to Larry, the asshole. Like, I loved Larry. Like, I want to get that guy on the podcast. I'm trying so hard. But I haven't heard anything yet. But that's another story for another time. But every character, from Jay, all of them, I love all the characters. Uncle Al, easily, like, the creepiest dude ever. The fact that he can go on a dime too, from this really chipper and, like, really friendly camp counselor, like, leader, to just absolutely creepy as hell, like, in a flip of a switch, was just so good. And that's just a testament to that actor, and I wish we could have him on the podcast, but sadly, obviously, he passed away. But man, like, then the ending was a surprise. It's like, oh, it's actually a military camp, and Saber's an animatronic. It's not even a real monster.
Yeah.
But even though it wasn't
aliens.
featured hardly in this at all. Oh, by the way, yeah, we're aliens, and we're going to Earth, so that's cool. It's like, what? What the flip just... What?
I love that ending.
Like, goddamn. So it's the ending that really put this one over to me compared to Welcome to Dead House. Like, again, the dog turning black and white, bad effect and all, but it was just like, nah, I kind of get where they're going with it, but I was like, nah, like they could have had a better ending. But Camp Nightmare, oh, so good. So that's my number 4.
Phenomenal episode. Love you, Kai. Welcome to Dead House is my number 4, even though it's book number 1. Again, so this is the episode that scared me. Like, scared me. You know what I mean? Like, there's ones that creeped you out. You know, there's moments here, like, well, Girl That Cried Monster was one that was, like, creepy, more for my brother, but Welcome to Dead House scared me. Like, genuinely creeped me out. And it was the scenes where, like, the graveyard scene, that freaked me out. Like, how they're just like, oh, no, don't go. You know, and they're chasing them through the graveyard, and like, he's grabbing onto Amanda's foot through the thing, and he's like, Scott. I was like, what the hell is this? That was like my introduction to like the zombie genre, essentially. But yeah, no, that episode, but the scenes at night were always really eerie. Like where you saw Ray like walking down the corridor, you know, you just heard like the screams of like the zombies just screeching out like meat, fresh meat, and it would like pan into the cupboard. You could just kind of hear it into the background. Amanda would jolt awake. But the scene that always got me, that just it sticks with me now, is where she looked out her window and she sees the shutters, and the guy's just got his hand there, and they just shut. But his hands, he's not doing anything to shut it. It's just like shutting on its own almost. You just see it go. Creepy, man. It's so creepy. And that was the one I actually didn't really like renting out as a kid, back when I actually had to rent it because I didn't own it. There was a video store down the road that had it, and I didn't like getting it out because it scared me. You know what I mean? Like, I used to look at it and go, no, I don't want to watch that one. I love it, but I don't want to watch it. It was always Slappy or The Haunted Mask. You know, those are the ones that you always went to, and you borrow those ones out. But this one, you know, my love for it grew obviously over time because, you know, as an adult, you're like, man, this is just so cool. But as a kid, I was like, I didn't even want to watch it because it scared me so much.
Well,
we're getting up to the top 3 favorite now. These are like the biggest
top 3.
My number 3 pick. Welcome to Camp Nightmare. I've said it before, and I won't. I mean, it's already been said. This episode's great. I love the tension in this one. I think everyone did a phenomenal job acting-wise. I like the characters. Billy's a great lead. I love the sense of isolation and tension in this one. I love the ending. I love how just what the hell is going on that ending is. And it's just a classic. I just think it's a really well-directed episode. It looks nice. The setting's great. And it's one that I really enjoy. So this is my number 3. Not much to say about it otherwise. Really good episode. Number 3 spot.
But my number 3 is Werewolf of Fever Swamp. That one to me is just so iconic. It was one of the best episodes in all of Goosebumps. The werewolf costume was great. Everything else we've talked about, obviously, very well done too. Music, visually, just everything about that is tantamount to, like, if they just changed a few things, it could legit be a great horror movie. Like, but they just held it back just enough to where it could be okay for TV. So, I mean, but you get the concept of, like, obviously the old man, the hermit in the woods. You think he's the werewolf the whole time. I love the reveal that it's Grady, but at the same time, the fact that they actually kill him, but they don't show it, but that guy is dead. They straight up tell you the werewolf killed his family, and then now that guy's dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's
actually really sad off. Think about it. It's like this character finally thought he got his revenge, and then he ends up catching one of those deer, and then just dies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So his whole life, like, people just thought he was a weird hermit. He lost his family, so they thought he went crazy. Some people think he's a werewolf, apparently. And then it turns out he's actually not a bad guy at all. Helps Grady, and then gets killed. So it's like, damn, this dude got the shaft the whole time. But the actor did a great job. I mean, everybody did. So Number 3, World Fever Swamp.
Fever Swamp. This is really hard for me because you guys know my favorite episode. I think Nick knows what my number 3 must be then.
It's in the background of your room right now. All over your wall.
Uh-oh.
The Haunted Mask. Haunted Mask! Yeah!
Haunted Mask is my number 3. Arguably the most iconic episode of the Goosebumps TV series. And I will not deny that. It is the most iconic episode. It is my 3rd most favorite episode of all time. I'm not going to say too much about it. I'm going to leave that one for Nick. I will leave the 4 for him. But I will just say that this was one that I watched as a kid endlessly as well. Like I said, I used to borrow it all the time, but then it wasn't really hard for me to find this one on VHS because, again, it was a common one. Like Terror Tower and Haunted Mask were like the 2 that you just found in the wild all the time. And then maybe Fever Swamp, you find 1 or 2 here or there. But yeah, no, this episode is a very personal story. As we know, delves into like bullying and getting revenge, but yeah, honestly, you guys know this one, and it definitely slots into my top 3 most all-time favorite episodes of the Goosebumps world in general. It was creepy, it was eerie, there was a lot of scenes that really scared me as a kid. I will just point out one, the scene in the shop when all the masks start floating and start making their way to Carly Beth when she's trying to escape. Go join us, Carly Beth. Please be one. That freaked the shit out of me as a kid, and my brother. Mm-hmm. We both hated that. Join us, Carly Beth. Literally, what you're doing right? You're gonna give me nightmares all over. But that scene, what made it? The fact that the CGI looked dodgy made it scary. Made it scary.
I would agree.
It was unnerving. It was weird. It didn't look... you know what it was? It was like in Courage the Cowardly Dog, the King Ramses, return the slab. It looked unnatural. They looked unnatural in the shot, which made them look scary. Mm-hmm. And that scene was easily nightmare fuel. I've said it before. I did have a nightmare about that, where the masks were jumping at me, and I would like clawing like this, and I couldn't get them to get away from me, and they just kept coming at me until I woke up screaming. But yeah, Haunted Mask number 3, I didn't want to say too much because I thought I would leave that one for a good friend down there. Other than that scene freaked me out.
It's time to get on to number 2. My number 2 is Welcome to Dead House.
Number 2.
Number 2, Welcome to Dead. Oh, nice. Good.
Love zombies and I love creepy houses. This episode is a great culmination of that. I think it's a very creepy story. The idea of anyone trying to get in your house, let alone zombies, is terrifying. I love how creepy everyone in this episode is in the town. I love the climax. It's probably my favorite climax of any Goosebumps episode, just when all the zombies just decide to attack and they're trying to get in the house and then they're all cornering them in the attic. It's great. Everyone did a great job. And I don't know. I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said. I love this episode. Like I said, love creepy houses. So, like, lightning at night in a big spooky house. And on top of that, there's a bunch of zombies that are just waiting to pounce, waiting for the right moment to come get you. It's very terrifying. So I've always really liked this one. It's my number 2 pick.
They're zombies, but zombies that can talk. And that's what makes it freaky.
And burn up in sun. So again, they're like zombie vampires. So
just the shots of the street in that episode.
Not only talk, but I mean, like, they can be, well, most of them aren't, but some can be just like regular people, like Mr. Dawes,
Yeah.
And the neighbors, the Thurstons,
Thurston.
for the most part, they seemed pretty regular.
She can literally bring you some little muffins and think it's all good. What was in those muffins? Because they obviously don't eat them. So, like, where are they? She's like, we just want to fatten you guys up.
Should be no surprise because it's a sequel to my favorite but it also takes place on Halloween. The Haunted Mask too. Enjoyed this far more than the book, just because of the changes that they made, giving a little bit more depth, I think, to Steve's character than what the book did, in my opinion. Just on the simple fact that, like, it's their last year before they're too old to trick or treat, which I always thought was a ridiculous concept. That's a side note, but I don't care if you're 500 years old and you come to my doorstep. If you're in a costume, you get candy. So anyway, the whole concept of, like we talked about before, when you had Haunted Mask 2 at your spots, it's just the whole concept was creepy. I mean, I kind of wish we could have got more of the body change in the Haunted Mask with Carly Beth rather than just the mask features that changed to make it look more realistic because of the changes happening. Like, Steve's hands changed, his posture changed, like everything changed because he was becoming old, even down to his smell apparently. So, because those kids were like, "Oh man, you smell, mister." So it's like, damn, you really are encompassing that old man, ain't you? Give them boys a Werther's. So, Haunted Mask 2, I mean, I loved it. I loved everything about it. So,
Haunted Mask
that was my number 2.
Is number 2.
Number 2.
Well, this is going to be a short, sweet answer because you guys have well and truly covered this one. It's certain VHS tape, which I own 38 copies of, because it is the one that I watched more than any as a kid. I have literally, 30. Well, I actually have more than 38 copies, Nick, because that's just the Australian copies. If I include my French copy, my German copy, my 3 American copies, how many does that make?
A lot.
38, 39, 40, 41, 43. And plus I got one on the way. So, yeah, guys, I am ridiculous when it comes to Night of the Living Dummy 3. I am ridiculous.
On
I am
VHS.
On VHS.
I am slap crazy. But this episode,
I thought this would be your number 1. I really thought this would be your number 1.
Me too.
Well, everyone thinks that, but no. This episode, it's because you know what it is. You know the Australian VHS, how it had Night of the Living Dummy 2 and 3. I preferred 2 as a kid, and I still do now. So I think it's like I just watched the whole video because it was slappy, but I loved number 2 so much because it was at the beginning of the video, and that's why I watched it so many times.
You love number 2.
Had Night of the Living Dummy 2, yeah. Well, had Night of the Living Dummy 2 been a 2-parter, it could have well and truly been my favorite episode of all time. But that doesn't mean it's my second favorite episode of all time, because I would put Night of the Living Dummy 2 there. But if we're talking 2-parter, then yes.
Number 2.
Well,
3 is number 2.
It's time for number 1. And I think...
Well, we all know what yours is.
Well, I think by process of elimination, and I think Nick's is just friggin' obvious. I'll go first, though. It's Haunted Mask. Of course it is. It's Haunted Mask. This is the best episode of the show, and hands down. It's really well written, really well acted. The story is very well done. I think it's very nuanced. I think it has a very deep message in it. I love the ending. I love the character arc that Carly Beth goes through. The makeup and the mask are incredible. It just has that wonderfully spooky atmosphere that you could put this on during Halloween and just get that Halloween feel. It's unlike any other Goosebumps episode. It's got an incredible atmosphere. It's just a treat to watch all the time. I love it so much. It's my number 1 2-parter. It's my number 1 episode. Haunted Mask is my number 1. What do you say, Nick?
We were leaving this.
Man, I could make this an hour long if I really wanted to, or more. I'll keep it short and sweet, though. I know this podcast is going on a little long, but obviously my number 1 is the Haunted Mask. So, obviously.
No.
I mean, everything we've said about it in past episodes, everything to now, Everything we've talked about with the Amos Crawley interview, the Catherine Long interview, you guys can go check those out. It's all there, but it's true. I mean, this is a very deep story, whether it was meant to be or not. And the characters are well written. They were well acted. Obviously, it takes place around Halloween. Again, my favorite holiday. And the mask design that Ron did was just so iconic. I don't know if it'll ever be topped in any reiteration of the Haunted Mask. Even the Disney Plus show, if they would have done something more than what we actually got, like I don't know, like this version of the mask has inspired so many people to become mask collectors, mask makers, to get into the industry of just special effects in general. Some people I've talked to and everything. So it's really an iconic episode. The fact that it was the very first episode of Goosebumps is also just like, you already started at the top of the hill. So it's kind of like, man, it feels like everything went down, but thankfully Goosebumps had that flow. There's a few other ones that climb back up there for us that we talked about tonight. But yeah, just keeping it short and sweet. That is the Haunted Mask #1 for me, always.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe by process of elimination, I know yours, Bjorn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny because this became my favorite probably sometime in the last 10 years. 10 to 12 years, I'd say. This became my favorite. And I'm going to say it has something to do with the fact that my favorite Goosebump book is the Horror Camp Jelly Jam, which we never got. So I like the camp aspect theme of Goosebumps. So had this have been made, even if it was shit, would have probably been my favorite episode. Even if it was like really bad acting, really bad effects, I would have been like, it's still, it is what it is. By the way, this just, if only that was real, I know this would be like, I'd be talking about this right now.
If only there were any other camp episodes, Bjorn. If only there were any camp episodes.
Welcome. I'm going to hold up this because my VHS sleeve is on its way back from Kai because he was signing it for me, and he's also signing, I think, for Nick, a image. So I was going to hold up that VHS sleeve, but for now, I just have to hold up the custom that Micah did, which is also really cool, though. So, yeah, this has become my all-time favorite episode because it still has that feel of, like, summer camp, but, like, again, like you guys said, I love the soundtrack. I love every single character in this, right down to the asshole Larry. Even the characters that are assholes, you still love them. For some reason, you just do. And of course, the lead, Billy, played by Kai, is like my hero in the Goosebumps series. Like, my Goosebumps hero, in terms of just protagonist. Because he is. He literally is the hero in that episode, and he just feels... like when you watch a movie and you got like your Batmans and your Supermans, like he feels heroic to me as a character. And I always looked up to him. I thought his style was really cool as well. He's got that 90s thing going on. And I love Save, I love the monster, even though it turned out to be just a, robotic thing. And yeah, it had the really, really intense twist ending that no one really saw coming that hadn't read the book. But yeah, I think it just hits home for me because, well, like, as you know, my favorite book's Horror Camp Jelly Jam, so this one just, I don't know, it hits home somehow. It hits all those beats. The only thing missing is Buddy the Counselor and a big giant purple monster that is in, like, a basement thing. Welcome to Camp Nightmare, all-time favorite Goosebumps. And that's the thing, it's another one of those episodes that just feels like Goosebumps. Mm-hmm. Just the essence of Goosebumps is there, 100% all the way through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Number one.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that we're at the end of this list, I mean, I was pretty excited to see where you guys landed with these, and it seems like we all had pretty differing opinions. So, but that's always the great thing about talking about the Goosebumps show is just seeing what episodes we like and what we don't like, and yeah, I mean, these were all, again, even the ones at the very bottom of the list have some things to admire in them, and, no matter what, they're all going to get played at least once sometime. So it was fun to revisit them and rank them, and yeah, I think this was a pretty good list of episodes to go through. Many of them are some of the best of the series, I would say. I think you guys would probably agree. Definitely the ones in our top 10s are among some of the best in the whole series.
I'm sure there's someone out there that thinks Shrunken Head is the best episode, or I think there's someone out there that thinks Cry the Cat's the best, or that's just
Teacher's Pet is an underrated gem of an episode. Who knows?
Yeah, it's just thinking. Someone might go, "Oh, Teacher's Pet was my favorite."
My fave.
You know what I mean?
It was my absolute fave. But but that's gonna do it for tonight's episode of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, make sure you go ahead and follow Bjorn and Nick, Goosebumps Sauce Fan and Shawn on Instagram and their social medias, their YouTubes. They really do deserve it. Let us know in the comments. What do you guys rank these 16 episodes? What are your least favorite and your favorites? Go ahead and leave a comment below. Let us know. And tell us what you think of our list too. Don't come after me about my thoughts on Terror Tower. I will ignore all comments. I'll call you a butthead.
Do it.
So go ahead and comment down below. Again, make sure you follow Bjorn and Nick on their social medias and YouTubes. Make sure to subscribe to the Goosebumps Crew YouTube channel. Follow the Goosebumps Crew Podcast on our audio platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Apple Music, or Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. And follow the Goosebumps Crew over on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok to keep up with updates for future episodes. We will have a new episode for you next week. But until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast from all of us here at the Goosebumps Crew. We want to wish you all to take care, stay safe, and don't forget to have a very scary day.